Welcome to the book of Ruth. This book could very well be and might have been attached to the book of Judges. As we'll see here in the first verse, it says, "And it came to pass in the days in the judging of the judges." Now, the word judge only appears 2 or 3 times in the book of Judges. And here we have judges appearing and judging, the verb and the noun. So it was in these days of the judges, so it could be tied in one book, as it may have been that way originally. And came to pass a famine in the land, that would be Israel, where they lived in. Went forth a man from Bethlehem of Judea. So they were down there in Judea, and they left into sojourn in the field of Moab because they heard there was food there, I'm sure. Now, Moab on the map here is down south here, Moab. And Bethlehem is over here, so they went across and down someplace in this area to search for work and food and so forth. So he went, he and his wife and his 2 sons. Theo, we have duo comes from that. Now here it's Gini, a wife. And the name to the man was Elimelech. That's how it's pronounced in the Greek. And the name to his wife was Naomi. And the name to his 2 sons, Mahlon and Heleon. So it says they're Ephrathites. Ephrath has to do with Bethlehem. Ephrathah was what it was called, from out of Bethlehem of Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and were there. So they were of the tribe of Judah. And Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died. And she, as Naomi and her 2 sons, were left. And they took to themselves Moabite wives. So they did what the Jews weren't supposed to do, marry outside of the faith. But yet these 2 men did. They were over in Moab. And the name to the one wife was Orpah, and the name to the Devterah, Ruth. Devterah, we have Deuteronomy, comes from that. And they dwelt there about 10 years. So they got married, let's say, 16, 17, 27 years old. And indeed, both Mahlon and Heleon died. And the woman, Naomi, was left of her 2 sons and of her husband, left by herself. And she rose up, and her 2 daughters-in-law, and they returned from out of the country of Moab. For they heard in the country of Moab, now we have Agro, Moab country, the country of the, it's not a country of like an ethnic or nation of Moab, but the country, agriculture comes from that. They heard in the country of Moab that the Lord visited his people to give to them breads. Now the famine is over, they've heard, and she went forth from out of her place of which she was there, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her. And they went by journey to return into the land of Judah. They're going to go back with the mother-in-law. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, please. Let each return into the house of her mother." Now, that's interesting. Normally it would be the house of the father. So either the Moabites weren't a paternal society, or the fathers had died and all that was left was a mother. I thought that was interesting. And may the Lord deal mercy with you, as you did with the ones having died, that is her 2 sons, and with me. May the Lord, Kyrios, bringing out, give to you, and you should find rest, each in the house of her husband. And she kissed them. Now she means another husbands that they're going to marry, go back to Moab, find husbands and raise a family and so forth. And Naomi, kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept, crying over this. And they said to her, well, we shall return with you unto your people. And Naomi said, return, please, my daughters, thigateres, thiga, dog. It's sort of a transliteration as far as the letters. Why do you go with me? Are there still to me sons in my belly? And will they be to you for husbands? No. Return, please, my daughters. In the imperative, go, please, for I grow old to not have a husband. For I said to myself, basically, is it to me a reality for it to be to me a husband, and I shall give birth to sons? Shall you wait for them until of which time they should become manly? Or for them shall you hold up to not have a husband? No, my daughters, for it is made bitter to me exceedingly for you that the hand of the Lord came against me. Now, it's interesting here, the hand of the Lord came against her. Either she was doing something bad, maybe going tying into the Moabites with their idols, or she was a righteous woman and blaming God, which is not difficult to do. You can go through hard times and things don't go right, and you think that God is against you. And may not be the case at all. This is not the case, because God really has the best thing planned for all of us. Now, the best thing may not be what we think is the best thing. Like a martyr that loses a life would not necessarily think this is anything really great to have happen to him, but yet Jesus says, jump up and down. Great is your reward in heaven. So the hand of the Lord, she's somewhat blaming the Lord in one way or the other. And they, the daughters, lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and turned back to her people. But Ruth followed her. And Naomi said to Ruth, behold, your sister-in-law returned to her people and to her God. So now we know that they were idolaters. So her sons married into idolatry. You also turn back, please, after your sister, she tells Ruth. And Ruth said, do not encounter to me to leave you or to turn behind you. Imperative again. For you, this is one of the most beautiful verses, I believe, in the Old Testament, if not the most beautiful, the apex of love. For you, wherever you should go, I shall go. And wherever you should lodge, I shall lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. And wherever you should die, I shall die, and there I shall be entombed. Thus the Lord do to me, and thus may he add more. That is basically if it didn't happen. For death only shall separate between me and you. And Naomi, seeing that she was determined to go with her, abated to speak to her any more. So that beautiful, beautiful verses, wherever you go, I will go. And it's like, I like to think of us staying with God no matter what. We should have the same determination that Ruth had, that no matter the problems that we go through, that we would stay with God no matter what. And things come against us, this devil, people accusing us and so forth, family members, or the world, all kinds of wars and problems, social problems, or the flesh which wants things that would destroy itself. All these things, they all come against us, but no matter what, we are to stay with God, to stick with him no matter what. And both went until their arriving in Bethlehem. So they get back. And it came to pass in their coming unto Bethlehem that all the city resounded concerning them. And they said, is this Naomi? And she said to them, well, do not indeed call me Naomi. call me bitter, for the worthy one embittered by me. Now exactly what this meant, the worthy one embittered. Now, I didn't put anything there, but now I'm thinking, well, maybe by me or in me. Wasn't sure, so I left that out, but she was bitter somehow. And so these people see this woman coming and another woman with her, and they recognize Naomi. And now this Moabitess, Ruth, may have looked different, as different races of peoples can look a little bit different. I had a friend who was Israeli. He looked very Jewish. He was a young man. Just had a look to him that to me, was very Jewish looking. And he was married to a Japanese woman. And he decided to go to a synagogue they'd never been before. This was in Southern California. And it was a Sukkoth, and people were all outside underneath these palm fronds, the tents. And so we pull up across the street, and David gets out, and he just starts walking across the street to all these people. And they're looking at him, and okay. And then his wife, about 30, 40 seconds later, she gets out by herself, and she starts going across the street. And I'm thinking, well, if I get out, they're going to think that I'm married to this Japanese woman, which didn't want them to think that. So I'm going, oh, well, so I'm going to wait for her to go over there. So she gets over, then I get out of there. So all these people are looking at us, and it was probably quite a sight to see this one man who was like Jewish, and the Japanese woman who definitely wasn't, and another person who wasn't, who was by himself. And so this is sort of reminds me of this, where Naomi comes with this Moabite woman. And so she says, I went out full, and the Lord returned me empty. And she was. Well, now she didn't blame being with these idols, so it might have been her, not the Lord returned her, but she returned empty. But, again, blaming the Lord. And why do you call me Naomi? And the Lord humbled me, and the worthy one afflicted me? And Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, to return from out of the country of Moab. And they came into Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. And that's a recapitulation there of what just said. And so now it's the beginning of the barley harvest. The barley has grown high up, and now they're ready to cut it all down and grind it into a flour. What happens next? We'll have to wait until we go to chapter 2, and I hope you'll join us in the next Bible seminar. And until then, God bless.